Americans are spending a bigger part of their income on food than they did 30 years ago. In other words, at least going by food costs, we have made zero progress in 30 years. In fact, just last week, the Wall Street Journal actually published an article titled, quote, "To save money, maybe you should skip breakfast." Not a joke. I've mentioned in recent videos how government spending and mandates have gutted our productive economy, despite the media's happy talk and useful advice about skipping breakfast. We are to the point that while each generation used to get much richer than their parents, in fact almost double their parents' income, today millennials pine for the glory days of their youth, living in an actual house their parents owned instead of eating ramen at 40 with their roommates. A few days ago, the same Wall Street Journal put some stark numbers on it, reporting that the last time Americans spent this much of their paycheck on food, the internet did not exist, Terminator 2 was in the theaters, and Madonna was still rocking the pop charts. Americans now spend 11.4% of their income on food, with both groceries and restaurants getting worse. That's up from just over 9% before the pandemic and before Joe Biden. The Journal thinks this will keep getting worse because of soaring prices for inputs and labor costs, especially since 22 states just hiked their minimum wage, which hits food production hard. Meanwhile, Americans' income, the other half of that number, have actually been falling since Joe Biden took office. According to my colleague EJ and Tony, the typical American household has lost $7,400 in lost annual income after inflation. If you had recently bought a house, that loss is almost double. So incomes are falling, food's more expensive, we are moving backwards. The Journal notes correctly that food prices are never coming back down. At least it's never happened under the modern Federal Reserve. Any inflation they take, they keep. Even Joe Biden's supposed inflation victory just meant prices went up slower. They never went down. Ironically, that same Joe Biden was recently threatening food companies for reducing portions, which they do so consumers can afford the product, because his talking point is that printing money to fund $7 trillion of deficits, which largely are buying wars and the COVID lockdowns, had nothing to do with prices. It was all corporate greed. As in, companies were not greedy under Trump, but now they suddenly are. As Tom Woods puts it, that's like somebody asking why a plane crashed and Boeing says it was gravity. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. Harder times won't be news to people who are actually living in Joe Biden's economy, for those who can see past the manipulated and cherry-picked government statistics. From shrinking houses and falling homeownership, those millennials with ramen, to second jobs and now soaring food burdens, we're seeing real-world indicators that Americans are no longer making progress, that the golden goose is dying. A fresh episode of the podcast just dropped where I round up all the weekly videos. Check it out at petersaintange.com. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.